Experts Tech Tips. I'm going to show you how to do a top end rebuild on a YZ450F. This one's the same 07 that I was doing the leak down test on. You can see that in my other video, and was losing a lot of pressure past the rings. I'm going to do a top end on it. Before we get going, I apologize for the heater noise and my shakiness and maybe some of my sniffles. I'm not sick, it's just 2 degrees in here right now, and I'm waiting for it to warm up. I'm going to start by draining the antifreeze. Just go to the bottom bolt of your water pump. Usually there's a little copper washer on it. Remove it, and then slowly, very carefully undo the rad cap, and it'll come pouring out of there pretty quick once you do that. Then you can just let it sit off to the side, drain it all. And while that's draining away, I'm going to remove the seat, put it off to the side, and followed by the gas tank. So there's the 2 bolts that hold it in the center line, and 2 that hold it to the radiators on the bottom. And then always make sure you turn your gas off too, because we have to disconnect the line from the carburetor. And then the tank can just go off to the side. Alright, we're at this step now, gas tank's off. I honestly find it easier to just remove the subframe altogether, because we have to get the carb away from this boot, the intake boot, and with it still hooked up to the other side of the air box, there's not really enough room for you to pull it off here to enable you to slide the cylinder head off. So I just take the whole entire friggin' subframe off and the shock. It's only a few extra bolts, and it makes your life a lot easier. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I've removed the lower subframe bolts. On this bike, it was a mixed bag of hardware. I had one side was a 10 mil and the other side was a 17, and it's a 10 on the top, but I'm not going to remove this bolt all the way. I'm just going to leave it in there a bit. And then I'm going to take the exhaust off. I'm going to leave it hooked up to the subframe, so just disconnect it at disconnect the header at the cylinder, and then undo the clamps where the header connects to the silencer. Then a little Allen key, remove the boot attach for the air box to the carburetor, and then kind of squeeze the boot and it should kind of pop off the carburetor body. And then now you can remove that top bolt, slide off the header, and then kind of wiggle the whole entire subframe off the back of the bike. I know I said remove the shock spring, but I didn't end up needing to do that. I didn't bother. Again, it's just 2 extra bolts, so it's not a big deal if you chose to, but then undo the carburetor boot at the intake there, right at the manifold. Carb's off, subframe's off. Next I'm going to tackle this head stay right here. They're all the same size. I think these are 17 millimeter, and it's got the same thing on the far side. And they all have anchors. But yeah, these both brackets, they have to come off. So just crank these guys off here. Usually they're pretty tight, so might have to lean into them a bit. I'm bouncing on the bar just to break that initial torque because they've been in there a long time. Undo the spark plug connector and remove the spark plug cap. Put it off to the side. Undo the upper radiator hose. Kind of squeeze and pull. Slide it off, push it out of the way. And remove the breather hose from the head cover, push it off to the side, and then rip out the 2 Allen screws that hold the head cover on itself, and just gently pry it off. Now this thing can be a bit of a bear to fit out of here, but there's only one way it will come out with it hitting the frame and everything. It's got to come out the right side, like I'm doing here. You have to kind of let the rubber bend over the camshaft sprockets, but it'll fit out. It just may take a little while. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove the tensioner bolt, and here's a little tensioner holder clip. This one came with a brand new tensioner for a Kawasaki, but anyway, you can put a little flat screwdriver in there, wind it clockwise, and you'll feel it like you're winding up a spring. Put tension on the chain, which then in turn holds the plunger in, and then you can put a little locking clip in, and this will hold the tensioner back, and now the chain will be loose. You can use a pair of vice grips on the screwdriver there too if you don't have one of these locking tools. then going to rip off all the cam cap bolts. There's I think 4 for the exhaust and 6 for the intake cam cap. So bring those off in a diametrically opposite pattern. And as you're lifting it off, be careful, there's a bearing retainer clip that may fall down. This little guy right here. And both cams have it, so just be careful as you're pulling it off that you don't lose that. Remove the exhaust cam. This is where you want to start bagging the parts together. And same thing for the intake. Just slowly wiggle. Sometimes the clip stays in the cap and sometimes it stays on the cam bearing. And then I put a little tool to hold the chain from falling in before I remove the intake cam. You can use a screwdriver, an extension, whatever, it doesn't matter, it's coming off. Then we got to undo the big 14mm bolts that hold it all together. So again, these I'm just kind of bouncing to break the torques, working in a diametrically opposite pattern, cracking them a little bit loose at a time, and then working my way and removing them. And pull them out, and don't lose the washers. There's a washer under each head. And remove these 2 bolts that externally hold the cylinder to the cylinder head. And you'll notice I can't get that last one out because it's hitting the frame, so it'll come out later. And then just take a soft mallet, break the gasket. You don't have to hit it hard or anything, and just walk it up by hand slowly, pushing stuff out of the way as you go. And then here's where you can remove that last big through bolt. And then for the chain, I just put my extension farther down, and you can let the chain drop and just keep lifting the head off and it'll come right out. There's this chain guide that slips in, that comes out, just put it off to the side, and then there's another bolt that holds the cylinder down to the base, that has to come out too, and also this clutch kind of clutch cable standoff needs to come apart as well. This one was put together improperly, but whatever, it works. So just remove it from the actuating rod, and I had to cut a little bit of lock wire that was holding it on. And then now the cylinder is free as well. So slowly tap with a mallet, break the gasket again, and just wiggle it up nice and slow. And before you lift it off, put your hand underneath to catch the piston and the rod so they don't slam down. I know we are changing the piston anyway, but you just want to be gentle if you can with it. Pull the chain through and put it off to the side, and there's the cylinder. Then get a pair of long johns or whatever you want to cram underneath the piston for this next part, because you'll be sorry for yourself if you drop one of the circlips down in the bottom end. And then grab the worst pair of snap ring pliers like I have here. Fought with this for a while until the wife decided to open the garage door on me and came home with some fresh beer for me, actually, which is pretty sweet. But I got the clip out, and I know you're not supposed to use the hammer to punch out the wrist pin, but I don't have a proper puller, and they really don't require much force to get out of there, so that's that. You slowly tap the wrist pin out the one side that you pulled the clip out of, and that's how you take them apart. Anyway, just stay tuned for part 2. I'll show you how to put it all together after inspecting it.